The Mary Rose sank in July 1545. It was ready for war, it was armed for war. They had all sorts of incendiary weapons, some of which were found on the Mary Rose, and the fire dart is why I'm here. I've made this from the best of the archaeological data we have.
Amazing, very, very quick, huge amount of fire, huge amount of smoke.
So we think there are two principal ways that this munition could have been used. Thrown from the tops, the crow's nests, or shot from a cannon. This cannot, under any circumstances, land on your own ship. And that, I think, is something we need to test.
Right, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, it's Todd here, and I am fascinated by medieval and Renaissance fire weapons. But one of the ones we know almost nothing about are the huge fire darts like they had on the Mary Rose. We don't even know if they were thrown or if they were shot from a cannon. So in my quest to find out, I made a first film where I went and visited the Mary Rose. I met Dr. Alex Hildred there, examined the parts of 3 original darts that they have. Now, Dr. Alex was one of the original dive archaeologists that lifted these artefacts from the wreck of the Mary Rose in the first place, and there are few anywhere that know more about these things than she does. Now, in the second part of my quest to find out, this film here, I'm going to go and make some darts, then I'm going to meet Dr. Alex in a field, and we're going to run a series of tests. We're going to shoot them, throw them, drop them, do whatever we can, light them, burn them, and we are going to find out what these things do. So the darts are made and we are back in the field for testing with Dr. Alex Hildred.
Hello. These are the baby darts, aren't they? They're huge. They're just like the original. Although I could only imagine what that looked like. And now I can see it. It's heavy. It's really...
It's about 4 kilos in weight. But I think the first thing we've got to do, Alex, is set one up and burn it, just so we can have a look at it close up and get a feel for what it actually does. So we've got 2 fuse pegs here.
So ours were oak.
These are oak, yes. Yeah. And they are there to basically leave holes for where the capping charge is inside them.
So that will then ignite the main charge once it's...
Yes. So now we've pulled the plugs out, it's now left 2 holes in the casing. So the plugs keep everything waterproof and everything good. But those holes now go through to the capping charge, the bit that's easy to light. And so then that fuse is poked down into the capping charge.
So you wouldn't do that until, depending on where you're going to use it, until you're absolutely ready to throw it or whatever you're going to do with it.
My guess would be that they would do this when they pull them out of storage.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm thinking 35 metres up a mast in a rolling sea definitely wants to be done before.
It definitely wants to be done before. So those are now into the charge itself. If that one doesn't catch, that one will cut. We're ready to go. So I just need to light one of those fuses now.
Shall we clear the path?
I think we best clear, yes. Here we go, Alex.
Do you have to run back?
I will run back.
Oh gosh, it's smoking really quickly, isn't it? It's almost instantaneous.
So yes, so that's just a fuse.
And is there just going to be a big...
There should be a bit of a flash as it comes in.
Whoa!
So there you are.
Good Lord.
So you can see the thing is fearsome. Long and sustained, and it's carrying its own oxidizers. Really hard to put out. You can't smother it, you can't cover it in water, you can't cover it in sand.
I think you can pee on it. I think that's all that's actually mentioned.
You want to try that?
No. But you can see if that goes into sails, it's just going to take them up, and similarly into our potentially
and look
on the
how
upper
much
deck.
Look how much smoke, which we know is noxious. We know that they used to put stuff into it to make it more unpleasant, even poisonous. But also look how much is dripping off it.
Horrible for anybody underneath.
Yeah.
You know, on the upper deck in the open waste.
Yeah, I mean, horrendous, horrible thing. But you can see how effective it is. Now imagine that up in a crow's nest.
I can't imagine arming it in the crow's nest, certainly, but pretty big. I mean, our crow's nest, the one that we've got, is only 1.45 meters in diameter, so it's not very
And you've got a mast up in the middle of that,
I know. So, I mean, you've got about that much space to stand.
Yeah. So I think the next thing we need to do really is to talk about the whole object itself and just explain all the parts of it, why they're there, what they're doing. The information we have about these darts is fairly fragmentary, but I've made this from the best of the archaeological data we have, so it should be pretty true to size and true to materials. The main exceptions are the shaft and the fin, right size, but I've made them out of slightly different wood, just to ease my life. But the whole thing is 2.2 meters long, plus the head. Now, we don't know how long the head was, how it was formed. I've kept it quite short and I've kept it barbed. So I've made it pretty much like the smaller cousins, the fire arrow, because what you want is the barbed head to lodge into a wooden target, soft target, and to stay there. And that's why you have the barbs. It's why it's short, so it stays close to the target. That long sustained burn right next to the target is what you really want to be able to set things on fire. And then we come to the incendiary head itself. Now, we don't know the exact composition of this because it's been too degraded. But in the medieval and the Renaissance world, they had so many recipes, we will never know exactly what it was. But we can assume, because they're trying to set rigging and ropes and so on fire, that you want a long sustained burn, not just a quick flash. So what it is not, what is absolutely not, is just complete neat gunpowder. It has definitely been modified from that. I have made a charge system that I've used on medieval arrows very successfully, and that's what I've used. So that is all stuffed into a cloth bag, which is stapled front and back to the shaft. We have a capping charge on top, so an easy ignition charge. The 2 fuse pegs to access the capping charge. That's then covered in cord, rosin, and then the pitch jacket itself. And then we come to the shaft. So the original one, 40mm diameter, silver fir. So that's a light and relatively strong wood, but there were stronger woods available, like ash. Coming to the back, we've got the flights, oak or beech, and these are nailed through here and here. So that's what holds them in position. But there was also, on the originals, a band of pitch here and here. Now that's a strange thing, because what would the pitch be doing there on a thrown weapon? It doesn't really make sense. So I have assumed that they're trying to bind the shaft together and to waterproof that binding. So I've also cord wrapped it as well as the pitch. So the overall finished length of this is about 2.35 metres, nearly 8 foot, and the weight is about 4 kilos, so about 9 pounds. So we think there are 2 principal ways that this munition could have been used. Thrown from the tops, the crow's nest, or shot from a cannon.
I know that holding that is quite heavy, and
Yep.
I think holding that in the size of our the one fighting top we've got would be challenging. However, and top darts are listed for the Mary Rose in the 1546 inventory, although the ship had sunk by that stage.
Yeah.
Top darts are, but they're numerous. You know, they're 40 dozen. That's 480. Now we found bits of 3. They're fairly big. I can't imagine if there were 480 that we wouldn't have more, more bits of them.
That's an entire room, if that's 480.
It is.
So there is definitely not evidence that these were thrown from the tops, from the crow's nests. But it has to be a possibility, because we know that they threw darts from there. We know that they had darts on the Mary Rose for throwing from the top. We have illustrations of the time, paintings of the time, that show that darts were thrown from the tops. But were they throwing these from the tops? Well, the first thing that you have to note is it's long, it's heavy, and it was cramped up there. And when you throw something like this, there is almost no weapon as feared on a ship at sea as a fire weapon. Uncontrolled fire could be absolutely devastating. If you're going to light this thing and throw it from the crow's nest, under stressful conditions, you will be under fire. The ship will be moving. It might be raining, it might be windy. But if you're going to throw this from the tops, you absolutely, definitely have to know that it is going to clear your ship. And the Mary Rose, from the mast to the gunwale to the edge, is about 6 metres. So even if you're side by side with another ship where you are lashed to each other, you are going to want to get this, let's say, to their mast or beyond. So you're talking about a distance of at least 14, 16 metres before you are comfortable that this cannot, under any circumstances, land on your own ship. And that, I think, is something we need to test. So that, in fact, went a lot better than I thought it would, went further than I thought it would. There was no way I was going to throw it as a one-handed dart, so I went for a two-handed lob. We're going to have a look, see how far it went, and make a judgment then. So we're 11 metres.
And you said 12.
I said 12 as an absolute minimum,
Yeah.
I think, for comfort. More would be nice.
But you weren't that high, were you?
No. So I was only about 7.5, 8 metres high.
And we've got 25, 35 for the 2 crow's nests on the main mast.
Exactly. So we have to assume that this would be full trajectory and then ending up falling vertically. Okay, so right under the basket there is just a white dart there, so that is under the basket. And then if we press play, there we go.
Oh.
Yeah, so it self-corrected really quite well.
It did,
and it went a lot further than I thought.
Because I thought it would be like half that distance.
I didn't think it would go nearly so far. So I'm just going to mark onto screen the trajectory. The reason that we've done this is because we know we are not remotely high enough and that these are going to come and fall. But I'm looking at the curve that we've generated there, and I'm going to say we might have even done half again.
I think you cover it from the 25, from even the lower crow's nest.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that the maximum distance that I could throw this from any given height is probably going to be 17, 18, 19 metres, which, according to what I was saying earlier on, is enough.
Definitely, because you're clearing the ship, but you've also got that gap between yourself and the next ship, so you're going to hit something.
Plausibly acceptable, which is really annoying because I wanted it to be impossible, but it wasn't. And that shows the power of actually testing it. Well, I think I found out two fascinating things there, Alex. The first one was that I managed to throw it considerably further than I thought. Plenty to get it onto another ship if they're side by side. However, the other thing I found out, and one of the reasons in my head it was totally implausible, was I thought, it's a dart, I throw it one-handed. But having seen how these things ignite, and the balance point, which is where you have to throw it from, is here, there is no way I'm going to light that and allow that to burn there. So my only choice, was to hold it like that and to lob it, actually using my right hand on the back of it. And that worked, as we saw, brilliantly, but completely differently to how I envisaged it being used.
I can't imagine doing anything other than lobbing it like that, so to actually do it with both hands must be sort of counterintuitive, other than the fact it's safer to do it.
For me, there was no other way to do it, because otherwise
the weight was just wrong.
You're literally here if you want to get a good throw, and there is no way anybody is doing that. So it has to be a two-handed throw. I have a thought about the darts from the tops, because we see these in the artwork of the time as well.
You do.
And these are a medieval and then a Renaissance fletched javelin. So these were a popular thing right across Europe, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula. But they are fantastic for throwing off ships, off castle walls and things, as well as flat battlefield use.
Because those are listed in bundles, aren't they? So you could imagine a few bundles being in a fighting top.
Yeah,
quite a lot.
and you're going to get 100 of these in a bundle that big. So that becomes, for storage, very plausible.
A lot easier, yeah.
They didn't have to be as long as that. If you throw that from the tops again, which is even smaller, even easier to do. Those as an anti-personnel thing, fantastic. Is there anything in the inventory that you feel describes this object?
No.
And we found remnants of 3 of them.
Yeah. But the key is where they were found.
Yeah.
They were found in the stern beside a bronze gun, which clearly during the casting had failed and the muzzle had not solidified, basically. Already that gun is slightly flawed. It's much shorter than it should be for the type. It's in a funny place in that the gun port for it is higher off the deck than the others. And when we recovered it, because we recovered it on its carriage, it was sort of frozen in the position where it's actually angled, whereas the other ones on the main gun deck are designed, because of the height of the ports and everything else, to be fired in the horizontal position. This one is angled up. So you've got a gun that is perhaps challenged by its own structure, and you've got a gun port that allows it to be angled, and it was clearly angled when we picked it up.
So I find all of that fascinating, because they put a gun in which clearly it's not going to be as powerful as the others. Clearly it's completely different to all the other types on the Mary Rose. It was previously damaged, but good enough for whatever job it was they wanted it for. And these darts were found right next to it. That's an intriguing little set of facts there.
But to throw a bit of a spanner in the works, it had a shot in its bore.
Yes.
It's 165 millimeter bore, and it had a 160 millimeter cast iron shot, which would have weighed about 17 kilos or something.
So it's not to say that these were shot out of it, and it is to say that other things were shot out of it. That we definitely know, because it was loaded up and ready to go. But the presence of these things near it, they fit in it, and it clearly has a unique purpose, whatever this gun was. Makes it very interesting.
It does, it does. I think we need to do trials with a big gun, don't we?
Fortunately, well, that would be nice. The cannon clearly was for a specific purpose. Could they have been delivered by that cannon? And we can find out. But I can't do it for real today, but I can do it with a scale model. So I have a 5th scale dart. Incendiary charge on the back, true to size shaft on it, fins and everything. So what happens when you deliver it with a very rapid acceleration of a gunpowder charge? Again, can't do gunpowder today, but I can do compressed air. Now obviously if you took your dart and you put it into the barrel, the blast is going to come around the dart. It's not going to push it well. You are not going to get a reliable and accurate release. You've no idea where the dart's going to go. So to solve that problem, you put in what's called a tampion. And it is this. It's just simply a wooden plug. And in this case, it's got a little hole in the center to register the end of the dart. And it is that that pushes the dart out of the barrel in a reliable and predictable way. So first the tampion goes in, and then the dart just registering into the center of the tampion. And now it is going to get pushed evenly and cleanly. But I've always been skeptical of shooting a projectile like this out of a cannon, because it's going to be subject to massively rapid acceleration forces from the gunpowder. This shaft here is long, it's relatively thin, it's going to flex, buckle, break, turn to dust. The head itself is fairly massive. And again, when you rapidly accelerate something, the not very good connection between the head and the shaft is going to rip out, and the head is just going to end up scooting down the shaft. And I can see this on similar jobs I've done before, like this fire arrow. So let's shoot our dart out of our model cannon with a full gunpowder charge. As we just saw, under rapid acceleration, the dart just fragments. But that's not the only way that you can load a cannon. You don't have to put a full charge in it. You don't have to put high-grade cannon powder in it. So you can launch this with what's called a soft charge. One that doesn't accelerate it nearly so rapidly, doesn't push it nearly so far. So basically what that translates to is, instead of having the 500, 800 meters of a regular cannon, whatever it is, maybe you're going for 50 or 80 meters. But in deck-to-deck combat, ship-to-ship, getting close, that sort of thing, perfectly acceptable. It would also explain the elevation on the cannon. But also these shafts are strengthened front and back with cord. I'm pretty sure of that, keeping the shaft in one piece. You don't need to do that if you're throwing it. The simple nails through the fin would be perfectly good enough. So what happens if you do it with the soft charge? Gentle. Alex, how do you feel about that in terms of close-to-close ship combat?
I think it's perfect. And when you reduce that charge, it went a fair distance and it still continued to burn, which is exactly what you want. And you're not going to be that far away anyway. Having engaged with your broadsides and you've just got your one gun left at the end and you've put a fire arrow in it, well, that's going to have a wonderful effect on the side of the ship. You know, at that distance, it's perfect. You don't want to be 100 meters. You can't see.
Well, also, I was thinking that, you know, a gun port has got to be a primary target. That's got to be your heaven-sent bullseye. But actually, of course, if you've got various sections of the deck also staved in from a broadside, suddenly the whole thing is far more vulnerable to something like a fire arrow.
And the fact that it'll stick into that wood or sails and continue to burn, yeah. I can see why so many people say that fire and fire arrows on ships are really dangerous.
It was the revelation for me that you could use a softer launch charge, yeah, that meant that the thing suddenly became plausible as a cannon launch weapon. But the other thing that I noted from the model is it flies really cleanly, because the flights on the back are not that big. The bulbous head here is not that streamlined, but it still flew beautifully straight. Another thing that's interesting about this being shot on a low velocity is that many of the ships were covered with anti-boarding netting. So netting that's stopping people coming on. A high velocity shot is just going to go clean through that. Something low velocity, much more likely to get tangled in the netting and deliver its unpleasantness right there over the heads of the people. So this is a section of your anti-boarding netting that you brought along, obviously a reproduction. Was it over the complete ship?
No, it was over the upper deck of the ship, between the two castles. So that's sort of like the fighting deck, and it's also the deck that everybody would have immediately tried to get out of. But you've got this, and that's 20 meters long, that part of the deck, and 12 meters wide. So that would have covered the entire deck and be very difficult to get through.
And I can speak from experience, it would have taken a very long time to make. So this is a section of tarred rope, and we've actually made, for the next test, we've made a section of anti-boarding netting over there. What I find very interesting about this is the intersections, because these are tied with a separate cord. They're not made like a traditional net is made.
No, they're not.
I've no idea why that's the case. But what I did there is I tied about 3 of these, did a quick sum, and worked out it'd take me about a week to make a section about 2 meters square. So I abandoned that and I used plastic cable ties.
Well,
sorry.
it's all right.
It's a very interesting object, and that's what caused a lot of deaths on the Mary Rose, wasn't it, we think?
The way out is only onto the upper deck, and then you try and get out, but there's no way through this. You know, you can't cut it with a ballock knife, especially if you're submerged or half submerged in a sinking ship.
This will stop boarders coming onto the ship.
That's the idea.
Also stops people leaving the ship. But the other thing is that it is going to prevent low velocity projectiles, if that is the case, like this dart being shot from a cannon from penetrating through and in.
Yeah.
But the other thing, of course, is, as we showed today, it's still plausible that it could have been thrown from the crow's nest. It could have been done. So I've got another rig set up. So Alex, this is our section of anti-boarding netting.
It's very stiff, isn't it?
It is. It's amazingly stiff, this tarred rope. Must have been horrible to handle, especially on a cold day. Up there, we have got a arm, and onto that we can attach our dart. So it's to simulate dropping it from the crow's nest, basically. Obviously, the velocity won't be the same.
No.
But that is about 8.5 meters up.
And see whether it penetrates or
Just
if
what
the
it
fire-
does, really. So let's get the thing up there, and we'll see. So here we go, Alex. It's not massively high, but it's the highest that I could reasonably achieve. So let's light her up, and when it's lit, then we'll drop. When the capping charge goes.
Oh, yeah. Whoa.
Oh, lovely. It's totally
And
stuck
it's
in the net.
completely stuck in the net. And look at what's happening underneath it. Can you see the stuff falling down?
Yeah, yeah. Picture the head and some of the compound just breaking out.
Now, is it going to melt? What's it going to do to
I don't
the
know.
net? I mean, that must be really...
Oh. Well, okay, you can see now it's burnt through and the charge has fallen.
On the deck.
That is
on the deck.
fantastic. This is almost a moment for a high five, Alex, but I'm not going to. But that's fantastic to see.
Yeah.
Well, we can go for a closer look now.
I mean,
Everything's
it's half destroyed the netting too.
Yeah. You know, we've got sections here which are burnt through. And of course, the cordage that was used to actually tie those intersections is pretty light cordage as well. First time that's been seen in 500 years.
Yeah.
Great. Right, what next? But if this were a short-range cannon-launched projectile, there'd be one target that the gunners would be going for above all others, and that would be the opponent's gun ports or the damaged sidings of a ship. To get this inside with its unregulated and fierce fire would be a fantastic thing for the attackers and horrendous for the defenders. Clearly, the dangers of fire on a gun deck are really obvious. But an aspect that is often overlooked is the noxious, irritant, even poisonous nature of the smoke that these things generate. And they generate it in huge quantity. Now, they deliberately made up the compounds in this to include things like camphor, arsenic, that sort of thing. Things that will really create an area that is hard to go into. And so to replicate that, we have a container here with a plastic roof, and we're going to light one at the back, and we're going to see how quickly it fills up. So there's our enclosure, Alex, and right at the back of it, we have got one of our fire charges. We're just going to see how quickly it fills up with smoke, what it would be like to be on a deck with one of these things going off. So I think you'd better do the honours.
Right. 3, 2, 1.
So we've got the fuse lit now.
I can see it.
But it's going to take a little bit of time to get into that capping charge, and that's when it really lifts.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And burning bits, smoke, filling it up.
Lifting now.
And look at the sparks.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa, and that is a huge fire.
And that, okay.
I sort of think I want to move.
And it's burnt a hole through the top, so they did have vents, but clearly a vent is not going to be enough for that.
Well, and that's...
Okay, well I think that says quite a lot, doesn't
I
it?
think it does. Small enclosed area.
So like I said, if you can get one of those in the gun deck, my
Or
goodness,
into any
Yeah.
enclosed space like a deck.
that would be a thing. It's still going now.
We can't smell we can see the smoke, but we can't really smell the noxious gases yet.
No.
But presumably it would have been choking.
Well, also, that's a very good point to note. The wind direction is going into the end of this container here and blowing it out of the top, where it obviously just burnt through the plastic. But that would be billowing out the front had it had a hard roof on it. But I think we got a very good flavour very rapidly. what that would do. I think today, actually, we've just done so many good little demos,
Yeah.
trying to work out what they're for, how they work and things.
And alternatives.
Yeah, and alternatives. So, well, because the truth is, we don't
know.
actually know. So I think it's time to conclude, really. Right back to the beginning, the Mary Rose sank in July 1545. But what's really important is it was ready for war, it was armed for war, and it went down, and half the ship, and presumably half its armaments roughly, were preserved. But not only that, there are fantastic written records of the manifests of what was on the ship. And it lists all sorts of the more common things that we would understand. But when it gets to some of the more obscure things, like these incendiary darts, it's much harder to make out, or even perhaps they weren't even listed at all, I don't know. But it comes to the darts for the tops, and it lists that in the manifest.
40 dozen.
And what do you think?
I think that's a dart for the top, because I think we've proven that it would be really difficult to have any number of those in the small fighting tops and to be able to deliver them quickly and easily. So having 40 dozen, and we would have them, you know, they're big. They're big things.
And there's a lot of them.
And there's a lot of them, whereas these, you know, these are almost the same size. You could have a part of a pike handle that would be the same size. So we could have missed some of these, but we know we've got 3 of those.
So part of the exercise of today was just to have a look at what they do, really. And we set it up just to burn one and look at it.
Amazing, very, very quick, huge amount of fire, huge amount of smoke, and very, very frightening indeed. Then we questioned whether or not they could be thrown from the top.
Because they are long, 2.35 metres over here, 8 foot long, 4 kilos in weight, so about 9 pounds. I didn't think I'd be able to throw that, but I managed it perfectly adequately and far enough to get it on a ship that was moored side by side. So it is possible, but again, in a small basket, difficult.
And then there was the gun.
And then there was shooting it from a gun. Not a full charged gun, because it's going to shred it. But you can shoot it with a soft charge. And that absolutely is going to work. But that's then going to restrict your distance.
I think that's fine, because I mean, you're firing on the roll usually, so you've got to be able to see the other ship going up and down, and you've got to be within distance to actually see what target, where you're trying to hit. So the idea that just because you can shoot half a mile distance doesn't mean you're going to shoot with accuracy with something like that you want to land in a certain place.
We know with a low charge, low velocity shot, it's not going to go through the anti-boarding netting. And with our little drop test there, we showed that, but it burnt its way through. And it was raining unpleasantness.
It was. I mean, it would be horrible for anybody underneath that.
So, I mean, maybe you could push it off with a pike or something like that, but that requires you to get close to it. Nobody's going to want to get close to this. And then our final test, and I think in a way our most visual, was putting it into a closed space. And I think you summed it up beautifully with the smoke and the fire there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as though it's a small fire. You can say, okay, chaps, let's put it out. It's completely uncontained, and it is like wildfire.
And almost instant.
Almost instant, so you've got no time to do anything, and people would already be choking and coughing and eyes burning.
Unfortunately, we don't have an area the size of the deck, but it would not have surprised me if that basically filled half of a gun deck in the Mary Rose with smoke. Absolutely an area denial weapon, and stopping you instantly being able to get to that fire and to deal with it. So Alex, thank you so much for showing me around the Mary Rose, for giving me your expertise, taking me back to the museum there, and for being here today.
Well, thanks for this. It's been fantastic. And what's more, we've learned things. We've got a list of new questions. And there's more to do. So thanks again.
Yeah, but brilliant. Alex,
bye.
Thank you so
Till
much
the
for being
next
part of
time.
it. Indeed. So there we have it, the Mary Rose incendiary darts. And if you've enjoyed this, don't forget I have another channel on YouTube, Todd Cutler, and I've got a website. And if you like this kind of stuff and you like history and weapons, go check out my website. You'll absolutely love it. And of course, I have a Patreon page, which when making films like this is enormously useful to help fund it. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed all of this. I certainly have. It has been fantastically interesting, and I'll see you again.